Okay, so we're recording now.
Okay.
This is working. So when I had this idea, I just kind of thought we'd talk about stuff from your life, so that I would have that forever. And if I thought maybe sometime I could share this with Leah, or maybe if her kids, when they get to be grown-ups, that they might want to hear you talk about your life and stuff. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. So when I first thought about this, it was right before Christmas, and the question that I wanted to ask you is if what you remember about your last Christmas in Australia before you came to the U.S.
Well, let's see. Annette was uh, 7 months old, and it was just my family, my mother and my father, and Robbie and Dart, and Robbie and Jack. No, Robbie and Doug and Annette and me.
And how old would Robbie and Dougie have been?
Well, Dougie would have been about 14, and Robbie would have been about 11.
About 11.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that Christmas that it was going to be your last Christmas at home? Did you already know that?
No,
No.
no, I had no idea. No,
Yeah. Did you have a pillows case for Annette?
no, I was getting a little. No, I got. She was too little to have that, so we just had her some presents, and that was it.
Yeah. Do you remember what the presents were?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
That's been a long time ago, actually.
That's been a long time ago. Because she's 75?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's 75 years ago.
My mind's not that good.
Yeah. Um, what kind of things that's a tradition that we haven't really done in our family, with the pillow slips instead of stocking.
Yeah, and because that pillow slips at that time had strings. You put the pillow in, and then you tied the strings to keep the pillow in, and the strings on one side were tied to the foot of the bed, and then that way the pillow slip hung open,
Okay.
and then Santa Claus could drop the packages into the pillow slip.
Seems like you could get a lot more in a pillow slip than in a stock.
Well, you have to dig a long ways.
Oh. What kind of things do you remember getting in your pillow slip on
I
Christmas?
always got some Yardley soap.
Oh,
Yeah.
the lavender?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always got a bar of that, and I always got fruit. And one year, Clarie was the older sister, and she had a doll when she was little, and it all come apart, and it was in a box. And back then they used to have what they call doll hospitals, and you could take a doll and they'd fix it. So that's what I got in my stocking that year. Mum had taken her doll, and then I had it all fixed up, and she had her head sticking out of the pillowcase when I woke up.
Sweet. Oh, that is really, because I mean, you would have been a little girl and Clarie was a grown woman with
Yeah,
her own.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I remember when she got engaged. She and I always slept together, and when she got engaged, I cried because I thought she was going to go off and leave me.
Oh. And eventually she did, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Uh, so now this is probably going to be a less happy part of what I was going to ask. Do you remember your first Christmas in the US?
Yes, yes. It it was different because it was cold. It never really, even after all these years, it has never really seemed like Christmas to me by it being cold,
Yeah.
because ours was always hot, and a lot of times you'd spend Christmas Day on the beach,
Yeah.
and
Did
so
your family do that? Did your family go to the beach for Christmas?
no, no, we didn't, but a lot of the people did, and it was so hot that, we always had a hot meal, but a lot of people just ate prawns and things like salads and things like that.
Yeah.
Mum always made the fruit cakes and the steamed puddings in October, and she always made three cakes. One, they were all fruit cakes, and one was for Christmas, and one was for New Year's, and one was for Jack's birthday because it was the 31st. And then the steamed puddings, back then our threepences were silver,
Mm-hmm.
and there's always threepences that were stirred in with the steamed pudding, and you always hope that you got a piece of steamed pudding that had threepence in it.
Yeah.
Because we were lucky if we got a penny. I used to get what I called a Saturday penny. I used to have to get out in the yard every Saturday and pick up the sticks and stuff so that Pop could mow, and I got a penny for that. And I could get a lot of lollies for that penny too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I had a question. Do you think because your mother spent her childhood she was in Folkestone?
Yeah,
Um,
in England, yeah.
so she would have been used to it being cold for
Yeah,
Christmas.
yeah.
Yeah.
She never did mention that about the Christmases being hot.
Yeah.
And her being used to the cold when she was growing up. But I don't know why, but to me it's always felt like not like Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think for her though, always making the hot meals and the fruit cakes and kind of heavy food?
Yes, that was English.
Because that
Yes,
was that's what she grew up with.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And your father would have grown up with that too.
Yes, yes. He was from Liverpool.
Yeah. So it would have been it's funny because when we were in Australia last year, the two of us, I kept thinking about how it was so hot and it was light out until, well into the evening. And
Mm-hmm.
so it felt like the Christmas lights almost seemed a little silly because
Yeah.
of the summer, and I was like, they should really flip this around and do the Christmas lights when it's dark all the time.
In July.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be, put your lights up in July when, you don't have that much sunlight.
Yeah.
So, do you remember much about your first Christmas in the US?
Not really. No.
You would have been pregnant.
They had a tree. The trees, we didn't actually really have trees like they do here. Our decoration usually was streamers in the dining room and across the ceiling. They crisscrossed across the ceiling, and then those paper Japanese lanterns hung from the middle of where the cross is met, in the middle of the streamers.
Yeah.
That was more the decoration for us than the decorations that they have over here. Although now because that's been many years ago. Over there now they have their tree and things.
Yeah. But they're usually artificial trees, aren't they? It would be kind of crazy down trees in Australia, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the evergreens, because everything's so green there, especially it being summer, I don't think it represents the same as, the evergreens here.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had a Christmas tree. That would have been probably your first Christmas tree.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And you would have been pregnant then with my mom.
Let's see.
She was.
Yeah. Yes, I would. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you would have had a little one and one on the way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cold. I don't think you'd ever been as cold as it probably
No. No, I remember Ethel, Annie's Pop's Aunt Annie, her daughter, lived across the road then, and I remember the first time it snowed. She was still in high school, and she come running across the road to get me up, because she wanted to see my reaction to the first snow.
If your reaction,
and I wasn't impressed.
I was going to say, unless your reaction has changed a lot.
No, I'm still not impressed. don't like winter.
No, I know. If I could send you back to Australia every winter, I would do it. Then you'd
If they
never.
had a highway, if they had a highway you could drive it, I'd be all right. But I hate that flight. It's so long.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So, is there anything else you can remember or think about the difference between Christmas there and Christmas here?
No, not really.
I bet you were pretty homesick that first Christmas.
Oh yeah, yes. I still get homesick every once in a while now after all these years. So.
I can
But it
imagine.
was worse then.
Well, I can imagine. Yeah, it would have been your first Christmas away from your family, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Because mom and dad were still alive, and all my sisters and brothers were still alive, and now I just have one brother left. And,
yeah. Did they send you, Christmas greetings where,
oh,
letter?
yeah, I always got cards from them, and because we back then we had to write letters.
Yeah,
And I remember if you wanted to make a telephone call, the first 3 minutes was $15, and then every minute after that was $3. And because we didn't have a phone, and one time Pop was going to let me call Mum, and we had to go down to the telephone exchange at French Lick,
yeah.
and the telephone booth was on the outside, and we had a really bad connection, and I couldn't hardly hear her, and she couldn't hardly hear me, and I cried because we'd spent that money, and because we had to try to say everything in the 15, because back then $15
That was a lot.
was like about $30 now, maybe more.
Yeah, yeah. And you two were just starting off and had young kids at home.
Yeah,
It's a lot. That was a lot. Uh,
yeah.
Change, thinking about the changes you've seen in technology, you've gone from, that one phone call that cost $15 and you couldn't even hear each other to FaceTiming with your niece
Yeah,
several times a week.
every day or two, I talk to somebody in Australia. So
Yeah. And you can see them and they can see
yes,
you. And
yes, yeah.
can you
And
imagine?
it doesn't matter how long you talk. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. And you do it from the comfort of your living room. I mean,
Yeah,
you've been able to make international phone calls for a while now from home.
yeah.
But yeah, to think about what a big difference that is
Mm.
from when you first got here. Because you, I mean, they were still using telegrams then too. If you had to get,
Cables, you had that to overseas. It was a cable.
yeah, oh, that's right, a cable.
Mm.
And if you sent a letter, how long did it take to get there?
Oh, about 7 days. And if I sent them a parcel or they sent me one, it took about 3 months.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember your first parcel from home?
No, not really.
No.
That's like I say, that's been a long time
Long
ago.
time ago, yeah.
Mm,
Well, and right after the war, they probably wouldn't have been able to afford to send you
no,
parcels
no,
because
they couldn't.
were things you've talked about how times were hard in Australia after the war. Was it like that in the United States too? Was
I
maybe
don't think it was quite as bad because our country was a lot younger country than what the United States was, and we were trying to recover from the war,
Mhm.
and
Well, and you had been at war longer than we had. We did,
yes, we went to war in 39. You didn't go to war until 41.
yeah,
So, so our war effort was, it just took everything that everybody had, really.
yeah, yeah. And um, I wonder sometimes like how much choice Australia had in all that because you're still part of the Commonwealth. Um,
Yeah, we were still ruled by the Queen, and well, everything had to go through her practically, just.
yeah. What year did um what year would she have kind of taken over, I guess? During the war, her father was still alive, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um I can't think of what his name was. I'm just blank.
George, the
George, King George.
George the Sixth.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
His father was George the Fifth, and he died before the war. So
And then of course his brother had abdicated and all that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So he was the king during the war. And it seemed like, I mean, you've talked a bit about how the English kind of used the Australian forces as almost cannon fodder.
Yeah, that was in World War One. It was worse than
Mm.
it was in World War Two because I think Australia learned their lesson. Um, because the in World War One, the English shot some of the Australians,
Oh my God.
and for something they had done, which wasn't shouldn't have been a death.
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister of Australia sent this reporter. His name was Murdoch, and I don't know whether he was the father of the Murdoch
Oh,
now or not. Probably
Rupert Murdoch.
was.
Yeah.
And he informed the English generals that would never happen again. So
Do you feel, I mean,
and
Australia's,
that's where that movie Breaker Morant came from. That was a true story.
okay.
That was the two soldiers that were shot.
I'll have to look for that. I don't, if I've seen it, it's been a really long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's been out a long time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, do you feel like Australia is more independent from England or
Yeah. Yes. Sir.
in your
Yes.
lifetime?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
That's one of the things that it's always been kind of strange being, raised in America, but these ties to Australia. But I always kind of wondered, like, why do they still have any ties to England? Like, why is the Queen still your queen? And,
Mm.
like, I don't know, it seems like Australia.
Well, I think it's more just in name only anymore because Australia is independent now. So.
Yeah. But I mean, even, I don't know, even that, maybe it's a lot of people are still tied to tradition.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can remember Judy and Norel. I think Norel would be done with the Queen completely. Like, why should we bother at
Yeah.
all with it? Where Judy's much more, but
Well,
she's
she
the
spent
Queen.
she spent years in England, so I don't know whether that made her more English or what.
Yeah, maybe she got corrupted.
Yeah, brainwashed.
Yeah, there you go. Um, I was thinking about your mother here recently. That I was watching that show called The Midwife, and there was a woman who came back to England after she and her siblings, they were orphaned, I think, or their family was very poor. So there was some situation, but they were sent to Australia, and they were sent to a farm. And this woman, she comes back to England, and she, um, you find out that she wasn't treated very well. Uh,
Well, that actually happened because during World War II, um, they shipped a lot of the children. They wanted them out of England so they wouldn't be killed, and they sent them to Australia. And some of the farmers did treat them badly.
yeah, yeah. Um, it made me think a lot about I mean, because your mother she was just a teenager when she left England,
Mm-hmm.
and
But she was alone. Yeah.
she was alone. I thought
Mm-hmm.
I thought she had come over with someone she knew, but she was
No, she was alone.
wow. Do you know how old she was?
I think she was 18 or 19. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
okay. For some reason I thought she was younger than that, but
I'm not sure about that. But and on that ship, she met her first husband. He was a jockey and he'd been over in England riding horses.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and they got married, and then she had she had 3 children by him, and then he died in that Spanish flu epidemic
Hmm.
during World War I. And she had Hilda and Clarie and Victor. And Victor died after his father did. And he died during the epidemic too. So I don't know actually whether that was what killed him or not. But he was just a tiny, he wasn't a year old, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. So she would have just been in her early 20s when she was away,
Yeah,
wouldn't she?
yeah,
Or maybe
yeah.
mid 20s. If
And
yeah.
she, because like I said, she had those kids, and she worked in this. Because back after World War I, there wasn't food, or anything, and everybody was poor. And she worked in this restaurant, and she would steal an egg or two to feed her kids, and she'd give it to this lady where she was living in this woman's house, and this woman would eat them herself and wouldn't give them to the kids.
Mm. Oh, that's awful. That's just awful. Did she talk very much about that kind of thing? About
No, no, she didn't really. And of course, um, I never knew an aunt or an uncle or a cousin, grandparent. They were all in England. But I do remember during the war her talking about getting this letter from her sister. And there's an air raid, and of course they all left and went to the air raid shelters. And then when she came back, all that was left from her house was a big hole in the ground.
oh my goodness. That must have been hard for her to get that kind of news and be so far
Mm.
away. Just and you've had news, that's been hard, and you've been far away and not able to
Mhm.
be with your family.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, we should try to stop on a
Think of something different.
yeah, I was like, we should think of something happier. um well, we started off talking about Christmas. Um have how many Christmases have you had in Australia since you came to the US?
I think 3.
3. There was the one
Mm-hmm.
last year, and you and I were together.
Mm-hmm.
One.
And then a couple of years before that, I was there. And
Okay.
then, oh, several years before that, I was there for Christmas.
Yeah. That the Lost Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was back when, well, I don't know how old Lauren is now. Because she's got 2 kids, but she was just a little year old then, I think.
Yeah, she was little enough to be on your lap because there's a picture of you passed out and she's sitting on your lap.
And she's playing the keyboard that she got for Christmas.
Yeah. Was Pop with you on that trip?
No,
No.
no.
Would
He wasn't there for Christmas, I don't think, William.
Okay. Yeah, it would be.
He went back twice with me after he retired.
Yeah. Oh. So the Forgotten Christmas, and I think, well,
Well, that wasn't my fault. We were over on Stradbroke Island, and always in my family anyway, we always have a champagne breakfast.
Mhm.
We
I've
started with that.
taken of a couple of those.
And we started with that, and then the neighbors next door had made some alcoholic ginger beer and alcoholic apple cider, and they brought that over. And
It would have been rude not to try it.
well, yeah, and Ken was on the radio at that time, and he had called and asked me for the recipe for the eggnog.
Yeah.
So he made that, and I had that, and then we went to the pub because they were open. But I don't remember that part.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you remember of the pub, Nana?
I woke up the next morning, and my ankle hurt, and I said, "I don't know what's the matter with my ankle." And I said, "Oh, that's where you jumped out of the back of the truck at
And
the pub."
and didn't you say I was in a truck? I was at a
I did.
pub.
And then I said something about swimming, and I said, I went swimming and they said twice.
And I don't know that I ever remember going swimming with you. I don't know that swimming is necessarily your thing, is it?
Too much. I like to be around the water, but I don't like to be in it.
Well, apparently that changes on Christmas Day.
Well, that's why we hadn't drowned.
It is. Well, I hope we get to spend another hot Christmas. I know you hate that flight, but maybe we can go.
Yeah,
We can go
yeah,
again when all this COVID's over.
yeah.
So,
I'll save my pennies.
yep, me too. Well, no, you always saved your dimes when,
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe with inflation, we'll have to save our quarters. I don't know.
Quarters. Yeah.